Howie and Beastmode podcast, where we discuss all things business, including growth, strategy, and execution, as well as personal and professional development. Let's join Howie and Beastmode in conversation.
Messed up on I just joined for the end of last month's, but I looked at the day wrong, and I was thinking it was when I was off a day. I was like, so I missed the last one.
So this is your first one then, right? Okay. Cool. Hey, Dennis.
Hey, guys.
Come on, Dennis.
Okay. Well, so I guess we can do a quick intro since this is Jeremy's first week. I guess I'll go first. I'm a co-leader of the group along with Jordan. We've been doing this since September. Oh, this is 2 years. Wow.
Yeah.
This is 2 years. Okay. So doing this for a little while. This is open to anybody that is interested in business, entrepreneurship, product management, IT, anything with their job or with business or with entrepreneurship. So what we do is we tend to have a discussion oriented. We usually have a verse or two, and we pray for needs, usually kind of at the end. But we usually discuss business and career kind of topics. So that's kind of what we do. Dustin, why don't you introduce yourself?
Dustin Wallace. I actually work with extended warranties for like vehicles. So if you purchase a contract, we institute the coverage for those policies. We're probably the top 6 in the nation, the company I work for, and we're currently expanding every day, actually. So the reason why I came to this business group is really looking to incorporate God into the workplace and how to just grow as a leader. So that's the main reason why I came to this group, and I've been here, over a year, I think, isn't it, Brian?
Yeah, I think so.
And I really appreciate what Brian and Jordan have done, and we've got a good core group of guys, about 5 or 6 guys who just consistently come in and do work and pray for people and grow and sharpen each other, and I'm just really blessed to be a part of this.
And we're glad to have you.
Oh, there.
Yeah,
Finally
Justin.
split.
What's that?
I said Jordan for a second was in 2 places on the screen.
Yeah.
He's an overachiever.
Yeah. Boosting our numbers,
Yeah, exactly.
I like it. Well, Jordan, what's going on and who are you?
Yeah, so I co-lead the group with Brian. Actually, he started with leading and through necessity and probably just the weight of the group. He asked me to come alongside, and it's just taken off in a lot of different ways. And so we started podcasting in January, pretty much all our topics. And so there's a unique individual who God has given us the ability to speak into their lives through this. And sometimes it's not glamorous, but we love the opportunity to share exactly what we're going through. Sometimes it's crappy, sometimes it's positive, but just be in the trenches. And so I'm grateful that you're here, Jeremy. I'm looking forward to hearing a little bit more from you.
Dennis.
Hi, Jeremy. So I'm Dennis Livingston, and kind of my career path is financial transformation. So taking businesses that underperform and helping to get them to their best. At the moment, I'm kind of looking for my next adventure, but it's probably going to be something else that underperforms and that needs some help. But other than that, I've been with this group, I think, since last November and December, and really appreciate what Jordan and Brian are doing for this group.
On the consulting side, or more like the venture capital investment side?
I would be Chief Financial Officer for private equity portfolio companies. All different flavors. So the last one was producing organic milk, which was the first and so far the only kind of adventure in the agriculture. But everything else was manufacturing of different flavors.
So Jeremy, what do
Different
you?
flavors of milk. Is that what the joke was?
No,
Like ice cream?
Yeah.
ask him now.
Yeah.
So Jeremy, why don't you introduce yourself?
Well, currently right now I'm in the farmers protege program to take over an agency. Kind of reason I joined this is that, and two, before that I drove semis over the road for 10 years. So all of the connections and the networking and everything I used to have kind of just went by because I was never home. I mean, I know people all over the U.S., but actually being here was like just moving back because of the fact that I just lost contact with everybody because I started before Facebook and all that was real big. So somebody got rid of their number or something like that. It was like, how do you find them again? And so that's one of the reasons, obviously, within business and sales and all that, it's networking, getting to know people, all that stuff, and just in general, just trying to get out back in the community because I really haven't been around for a while.
So you're basically taking over a farmer's insurance branch?
As long as I can get the numbers right and produce good, then yeah, I'd take over the agent that's currently with it. I mean, I got lucky with that one. The project program is just to get you to the point to where they know you can produce running your own business, and then you can look for an agent's book of business to purchase to take over. But I got lucky with when I did it, the actual second agent who called me is 66 going on 67 and looking to train somebody to take over his agency because obviously he doesn't want to just hand his book of business over to anybody and then they all get lost because they don't know that person. So he wants that trained to help that person also have that continuity of when the people all get a letter in the mail saying so-and-so's taking over, like, oh, okay, I already know who that is. Fine.
Mm-hmm.
Big of a thing.
Well, that's good. I mean, if you could take over a book of business, because that's a hard thing to do in terms of building it from zero.
Oh, yeah.
So
I mean, the way that program's set up, I don't know how you could do it from zero unless you had a couple $100,000 in the bank because they require you from day one to have at least a customer service representative assistant. And within 3 months, they want you in an office. And it's like, okay, their commissions and stuff pay every 3 months. Your renewals pay every month. So if you have no renewals, you're going 3 months without any bonus, any commissions, nothing, and you're having to pay out salary to an employee plus try to pay for marketing and your light bill, rent. Yeah, without business, I don't see how you could survive.
So you're basically getting into a situation where you're overnight, you're in sales.
I've been in sales before, so I mean, it's not my first job. It's just I don't have the connections I used to have. I mean, when I was in
Where do you live?
I live in Justin. Well, not in Justin, but I'm right by the Texas Motor Speedway.
Okay.
My office is in Flower Mound.
Oh wow, you got a little drive there.
It's not that bad.
Not too bad. You go to Gateway?
Yeah, I go. Now that they finally opened back up, me and my wife usually go to the Southway one. That's where we usually go.
Cool. Very good. Well, that's great. Well, we are glad to have you, and we talk about business a lot, so I think you'll probably benefit from this quite a bit, actually. So I'm going to share my screen real quick, and what we do is this is a roundtable. So this is not life group leadership is not the place you want to be if you are a frustrated preacher. Life group leadership is a facilitation and a supporting and kind of a guiding, thing focused on, more being a facilitator. So everybody gets to share in this group. Let's see here. So you'll see what that looks like here in 10 seconds. So we are talking about building during difficulty this week. And,
This is week 3.
This is week 3 that we're talking about this. And so Jeremy, we actually do a podcast. So this group meets on the 2nd and 4th Tuesday. But we actually do a weekly podcast. So we record this session right here. And then on the week that we don't meet, Jordan and I are still meeting and doing a little talk. So this is basically the 3rd time that we've talked about a different angle on building during difficulty. Of course, this is a difficulty for you. It's a difficulty for each one of us in different ways, whether it be working from home, building a brand new business in your case, or taking it over, new to you, let's say. Difficulty, obviously, for Dennis in terms of the job search. And then myself also, I was laid off due to COVID directly. Also difficult. I'm now at almost 4 months. In 6 more days, it'll be 4 months. So pretty hard, time of searching. I actually applied for close to 100 jobs last week. Now, I will say some of that was with an automated tool, but still a lot of effort, a lot of activity to get the word out. So yeah, building during difficulty is a great topic for this time for any of us. The first thing I wanted to cover, and I'll have each one of you guys comment on this as we go, but it's to, when you're trying to build, sometimes people say if you're not growing, then you're fading, or if you're not growing, then you're shrinking, or if you're not growing, your competitor is growing. There's all kinds of different negative, you've got a carrot in business and you've got a stick. And the stick that you always hear about is that if you're not growing, then something bad is happening. And that's probably right. And Dennis would know that we have attrition in business. All of us know this, but Dennis is closer to the financial, there's a certain amount of business attrition that happens. So if you're not growing, it actually is true that you probably are shrinking. Even if you're staying the same, that probably means that you're attriting some and you're only growing enough to stay the same. So you're probably not in a really good shape with that either. So there's a guy that I like a lot that I recommend. He's a lot on YouTube, but he also has a podcast on all the major platforms, Jordan B. Peterson. And he said that he used to have college students a lot of times talk to him about a research project was just overwhelming to them. And they didn't know where to start, or a paper, because it was just a difficult topic. They weren't even interested, and it was going to require, weeks of work or whatever it was. And it was just, they were so intimidated that they were frozen. And I have felt that a lot. It's one of my faults. This right here, this first bullet point, is one of Brian's personal faults, which is that I do suffer from paralysis if I'm not sure what to do. So what Jordan B. Peterson tells his students, and he tells everybody on these podcasts, is make even an ugly draft, make an ugly plan. What he tells his college students is, if I had to put a gun to your head, and if I gave you a week to do a paper, and you had to do it under threat of this gun to your head, you could write, plus if I let you make it be an ugly paper, just write a terrible paper. But you've got a week to do it, or else I've got a gun to your head, and you don't know what's going to happen. And so he got his college students motivated to say, okay, so my first draft can suck. My first draft can be terrible, and it can be ugly, and it can be awful. And so this has been speaking to me today, all day today, because I'm working on a little side hustle. At the same time, I'm looking for a job. I'm trying to create basically a fully autonomous or close to autonomous business. I have this idea for business development, and through cybersecurity, this happens to be the thing that I'm working on, but I'm paralyzed, and I've been paralyzed for 4 or 5 days because I am busy with the job search, so it's hard to I could make excuses and say, well, part of it's that I'm busy with the job search, and that's not wrong, but I should have at least drafted an ugly plan by now. And so what's been in my heart, I feel like the Holy Spirit talking to me, just saying, remember what Jordan B. Peterson said, stop being paralyzed and write your first draft, and it can be terrible. So anyway, you guys have any, I want to let everybody talk who wants to. So who has experience with this paralysis topic? Do you get paralyzed when you're starting something?
I would say I don't have the paralyzation of making a plan or draft. Mine would be more of acting, deciding which way I'm going to go with it. Like I can sit there and research for a week and make up a plan, and then I'll be like, start, and then like, no, it's not going. And then look for another plan. That's more my issue. So I guess you could still say it's a paralysis, but it's more of getting act in the plan versus sitting there doing the research to get it going.
Mm-hmm. Got it.
I would say for myself, like when I got interested in investing, that I was interested in that, still interested in it, but when I did that about 3 years ago, everybody's got a strategy, and you want to obviously you're messing with money, so you want to have the best strategy, but it doesn't ever work out like that because it just really depends on your personality type, what you're looking for, and so finally I decided to say, you know what. I'm just going to start. I obviously don't know what I'm doing, but I'm just going to start and I'll figure it out. And so over the past couple of years, I've gotten a game plan to where I can say, okay, well, I've got a plan now. This is what I look for. This is what I invest in. And so now, 3 years later, I don't have any stress about it. I have a technique I use. I help others invest. I manage, a couple of friends' portfolios, and literally like 3 years later, no sweat. And so I'm definitely the whole analysis paralysis thing. I get overloaded sometimes. I've talked to Jordan about the YouTube channel I want to start. It's kind of part of it too, is that I'm over analyzing things.
Yeah.
A lot of times you just have to start. And then once you start, that's when the real work begins, right? But if you never start, then you don't allow that process.
If you're taking money for managing those portfolios, you better be careful if you're not licensed. Because I also did finance too. I've got a securities license. Because we do finance for farmers too. Yeah,
but I help a couple of friends and family members, and so I help them with a little bit, and it's a hobby of mine. I like to help people do that, but I did it for, I did trading. I was a day trader for a couple of years, was doing that, and then just through the whole process. But if you never start, you won't get to the end result. You've just got to start doing it. And I love that, make an ugly plan. Just start. It doesn't really matter what it looks like because it's never going to be what it's going to look like at the beginning. It never is. But if you never start, you'll never get there.
Be what you plan. Something's gonna happen.
Yep. Yeah, something's gonna change, but if you never get to that point, it'll never happen.
Yeah.
It's a good learning process.
Yeah.
Dennis, have you ran into this, or have you personally ran into this at all, or do you know what we're talking about?
Yeah, I mean, it happens pretty frequently. Would say I'm definitely not an exception to the rule.
Any tips at all, or ways that you've sometimes been successful with that?
I would say start with the first step, right? Because typically, once you kind of have some doubts or like you don't want to start, that's because there is some uncertainty on like step number 5 or step number 7, and you say, oh well, okay, look, I'm not gonna like make step 1, 2, 3, and 4. Because then I'm going to get to step 5 and like what I'm going to do. But the reality is that once you take step 1 and then step 2, which typically is kind of certain what you're going to do, the things just open up. I mean, you just understand what's relevant, what's not relevant. So I guess my advice would be to cite, I don't know who it said, I think it's like a Chinese saying that 1,000-mile journey starts with the first step and can only be taken one step at a time. So.
Great, thank you. Jordan, what about you, man?
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, we're all different and have different strengths. And so, I know Dustin and Jeremy talk about research. They love to research and kind of get that and then get going. For me, that's the last thing I want to do. As soon as the idea pops in my head, I want to go, and I'll figure out the rest later, And so I know that we all struggle have different struggles. And that's part of point number 3 and point 4 is, you know, the collaboration effort. But I totally agree. I mean, there's certain things that I just don't want to do. And I know we've talked about it in business, and that was specifically something that I dealt with, which was creating a CRM or whatever. And I just didn't want to do it just because it wasn't exciting. It wasn't fun. It physically hurt me, you know? But I mean, really, I mean, seriously, Brian, it did. But it's just one of those things that you just create the plan of, okay, well, I'm going to spend this amount of time, and, you know, this is the goal, and here's the next steps, and just start going. And just like everybody said, you know, it starts matriculating faster. So
great. Good. Well, the next one is kind of Jordan's jumping off point. So talk to us about starting simple.
Yeah. And so this was really spurred on by the devotional that we do as a Gateway Business Group on YouVersion. So Jeremy, if you have YouVersion, I would encourage you to send me a friend request, and you can get in on these devotionals. They're pretty tremendous. But one of the devotional days talked about George Washington Carver, and the entirety of the devotional was talking about how God's interested in our work. I mean, that's the name of the entire devotional. But specifically, the way George Washington Carver brought God into his work, he brought it in at the most simplest step. And hopefully, I'm not spoiling it for everybody, since it did happen like 3 days ago. But he would ask God, "Why did you make the peanut?" And he would just ask God every day in his quiet time, "Why did you make it? Why did you make the peanut? Why did you create it?" And allowed God to speak to him from the most simplest aspect. You know, he wasn't trying to solve the problem that he ended up solving with peanuts, you know, which I'm sure he had that thought, but he started with the most simplest idea he could. And I know that we talked about this a couple of weeks ago when we talked about problem solving, and, you know, we don't need to create and find new problems, find new challenges to overcome. They're already there. And so it's just finding the most simplest aspect and starting with that. And so that's part of the ugly plan as it resonated with me. So any thoughts on that?
I mean, I'll go first. I mean, I love him. I really would like to at some point read an autobiography or a biography on him. He was an African-American gentleman in the early 1900s, and, you know, a smart guy, an inventor during the worst, you know, we think we've got racial problems now, not compared to how it was in the early 1900s, and we still have a long way to go, of course. But yeah, way worse. And what a hero, what a guy. And the jobs that he probably created are hard to calculate. And I believe the reason why I could be wrong, so you can fact check me, but I think the reason why he got into this peanut question was he was trying to replace tobacco. I could be wrong about that.
I think you're right.
Okay.
It was cotton.
Or
Cotton was
some kind of
replacement. Why was he trying to replace that, by the way? I don't know the backstory.
Yeah.
He invented the synthetic yarn, like a synthetic type of material, right? In place of cotton. Isn't that what he's known for?
Well, he's got 300 items that he invented involving food or agriculture. But how he got into peanuts was that farmers were planting cotton on top of each other and was depleting the soil. And so their crops, their yield was going down and down and down. And so his proposition was a replacement of giving the soil a break while replenishing it and getting a product. And that's where the peanuts and sweet potatoes came in. And then with the yield, then he's talking about how to use peanuts, and that's where peanut oil came from. That's where
peanut butter.
He didn't invent peanut butter, but he did the oil, and then peanut butter came later. But
that's cool.
I can't remember everything he did, but yeah, he is really famous, really big inventor.
Superhero kind of guy, no doubt. Really proud of him. And a serious brother, according to Jordan as well, which is great. So, yeah, that's my only comment is that he was a guy who certainly built during difficulty, which is the title of our time this week. Not only racism, but having to invent. I mean, racism would have been enough to stop anybody, to be honest.
Yeah.
But overcoming that and being an inventor. 300 is something that I didn't realize, but that's amazing, those inventions. So yeah, that's great. And I think what speaks to me about, again, I don't have any like a lot of deep thoughts, but just for my turn, I will say part of your story is kind of cool that he just asked God, what did you intend with the peanut? What were you thinking? That's a great question. Like, Dennis could say, God, what are you thinking about XYZ business problem that I'm trying to solve? Or, this seems to be a real serious challenge. Or any of us can do that. So that the ability to ask God is a very special thing in business. And he did it.
Yeah. And I just wonder, what really spoke to me is, for myself and business and things like that is, how can I apply that same mentality? And it almost kind of piggybacks off of this past week's message about the innocence, about just being innocent in the fact that I don't know. I mean, I do marketing and social media and business development for a living, but the fact of what I know compared to, not only everybody else, but the creator of all of it, is just coming with that mentality, and just letting the conversation unfold, putting God in the driver's seat, I think is important.
Yeah, I forgot he taught at Tuskegee.
Oh, did he?
Yep.
Yeah. He was a professor, I think.
Oh my gosh.
I forgot about that. I think it said I was looking it up. He was born born into slavery like a couple months before it was outlawed.
Oh my gosh.
So he was right at the end he was a slave for a little bit and then went and got his master's.
That's some precious story of overcoming. It's great. Well, who wants to talk next or comment about this particular point we highlighted?
I don't know. I sometimes think starting simple can be the hardest thing because you put too much into what seems like it's not simple. But I mean, I get the point of doing the start simple because that's the easier thing to do. But sometimes it's hard not to overplan and look at everything.
Good.
That's my issue, anyways. Because I'm a numbers data research person, so I'm like trying to look for as much stuff as I can to eliminate as much of what I know is going to come up as I can.
Yeah. Yep. Eliminate risk and all that. Makes sense. Anybody else?
Well, I think on this for me is what this is speaking to me is instead of looking to yourself for answers, like Jordan was saying, why don't you ask God? Let's ask the one who created everything, how do you want to run this, or what do you see this business as, right? You're asking for the assistance, you're asking for the guidance instead of trying to come up with your own solutions. Because ultimately his way is going to be better anyway, so why don't you just ask him to begin with?
It's good. That spoke to me because I haven't thought to do that on my side hustle. Yeah. So thank you.
Same here.
Good. Dennis, anything, or you want me to go to the next one?
Yeah, let's go to the next one. Don't have much to add for this one.
Yep. All right. Well, seeking advice. So the verse that we have is here. I think I'm sharing still. War. Here you go. Proverbs 20:18 says, "Plans are established by counsel, by wise counsel wage war. And that just kind of came out of our planning talk. So we just felt like that was good. There's another one that says, in a multitude of counselors, you find wisdom. So real similar kind of approach there. So yeah, when you're seeking advice, have a sounding board. I guess I'll kind of start this off for no particular reason, other than maybe because I have a pretty good story about it. So I told you guys I did I applied to over 100 jobs last week, but one of them was the ladders, and I applied to at least 79 jobs just through the ladders. And I did that with a brand new feature. It's a paid feature, so I had to spend $29. But for $29, I got access to this new feature that the ladders has only had for, I think, a couple of weeks or something. And it's called Apply for Me. And literally you have to fill out an extensive profile first, but then when they've got all that data on you, then you can just go click. You can do a search engine and pull up, whatever your title that you're kind of going after is, and then just click apply for me. So I did that to like 79. I counted, the reason I know that is I counted the confirmation emails that I got in my inbox. There might've been more than that, but there's 79 that I know for sure of. And out of 100 jobs I applied for last week, or maybe more, I don't know, let's just say it was 100, 79 of them were done in just a few hours with the apply for me feature. So it's a pretty cool feature. So if Dennis hasn't checked out the ladders, for example, I think it's well worth the $29 to have, the apply for me feature. But anyway, today I got a call. It's actually during my devotions, and I got a call from the ladders, and I was just bracing myself that it was going to be an upsell call, right? And because I'm just tired of spam. I'm really, whether it be inbound calls or whether it be LinkedIn or email, I'm just tired of spam, period. But for some reason I picked up the phone, and it was supposedly customer service from the ladders, which I was still ready for that to end up being a pitch. But she went and she said, yeah, I'm from the customer service department, and you're one of our, more busier users of a new feature that we just launched called Apply for Me. And I was like, I'm aware. I'm surprised I'm one of the more busy users, because who wouldn't want to apply for dozens of jobs with one mouse click? I mean, I don't know, like, how could I be one of the busiest users? Although it doesn't surprise me, because my personality, I tend to be a little bit intense. And so she was just like, yeah, we're not trying to sell you anything. We really want to get your feedback on this product. And so the ladders was a great example of having a sounding board in this bullet point of seeking advice and having a sounding board. In this case, it's not with sales, it's with product management. And they want to know how that new feature is going. And I personally believe that new feature is going to be a game changer for them and will really elevate them competitively against other job sites. And what it did for me as a customer is it built a relationship. Now I want to go talk about this on LinkedIn, and I plan to give them praise on LinkedIn that they cared enough to call and ask a customer how it was going, right? That means a lot to me. And I only spent $29 with them. And so that's my jump. I'll flip it to you guys next. But that's my thought on when you're trying to build, which is our topic, building during difficulty. Seeking advice is real huge. Having a sounding board is really huge. And you may not have in your situation a staff that can go get feedback like the ladders does, but having a feedback for your investment business or for your brokerage business, getting feedback on, hey, here's what I'm doing, here's what I'm thinking, what am I missing, what would you do, and that kind of thing. Just getting that, having that listening. And there's something about the connection you establish by asking that is really big. And I just showed you how excited I was about this new company, or new to me. And you see the connection that was built just by asking for feedback and just by having me be a sounding board for them. So I kind of went too long, I'm sorry. But who would like to talk next about seeking advice and trying to have a sounding board in your career or in your business?
Saying business, and you said it wasn't sales, but in a way it was, because with what they found out from you, now they can use that as a review is a way to push the sales of it, to advertise for it. I mean, that's what kind of any business is. While you may not have a customer service department, you do have Google, Facebook reviews, Google reviews, Yelp reviews, and you can always reply to those, comment back. You should always reply and comment back to those. And obviously they have systems like Podium to where every new client you get, you can send them a text message or a link for them to go do a review, kind of asking them to leave something, and then you can do those comments. But I mean, definitely this time right now, is that's bigger than anything, because you can't just go meet people face to face. It's all becoming virtually. Social media is becoming even more of an effect of how you're going to do.
Good, Pete. That was good. That was good. Dustin, I know we try to be a sounding board and a friend to you, but what's your general thoughts on seeking advice, building your difficulty, making a plan, having a sounding board? What's your advice and thoughts, experiences?
Well, I thoroughly believe about the whole seeking wise counsel. I mean, that's the reason why I became part of this group in the first place, is to get more wise counsel. And I don't think that we should ever stop building our network of wise counsel. I think that the more it grows, we all will learn from it, and I just think that's such a important part of a business and growth, is to never assume that you know everything. You're always on that learning path, and once you realize that, I just think that there's really no limit on what you could achieve if you just stay open to that and just continue to seek that counsel.
The old saying when I was in truck driving used to be, is the day you're on the road and you say you're stopped learning new things, is the day you retire. Because it's the day you're going to kill somebody.
Wow. Seems wise. Dennis, how do you feel about having a sounding board, seeking advice? I mean, obviously there's some vulnerability there, right? And we do have to be willing to be kind of vulnerable, but how do you feel about this?
I'm all for it. And kind of the reason I'm all for it, one of my kind of favorite scientific subjects, if you will, is social psychology, right? It's kind of how people interact and how we are very, very imperfect humans. And one of the kind of key concepts in the social psychology is what's called the confirmation bias. And I'm probably everybody is aware, but I'll still kind of reiterate what the confirmation bias is that once we set our mind on a certain thought, so once we think that something is right, out of all the body of evidence that's around us, we choose to very much pick the pieces that support our kind of belief, or that support our bias in this particular case, and we seem to kind of greatly ignore everything else. So and they did kind of a lot of very interesting scientific experiments that once they went to the horse track, and they asked some people who were trying to kind of bet on the horses what they think, and the moment before the moment when the person actually goes to the betting booth and places this bet, they all seem to produce kind of a more or less common sense analysis. They say, oh, okay, so this horse is strong in this and this horse is strong in that. So, I mean, they are objective. They have kind of a more or less independent opinion on what's going on. But the very moment the same person goes and makes a bet, everything that he sees is why his particular bet will win. Like literally 2 seconds ago, he was kind of more independent, he was common sense, he was able to produce this analysis. The moment he made this decision, the moment he put his bet, he is absolutely locked at getting all the evidence why his choice was correct and absolutely ignoring everything else. Even though this is, again, it's just like the same person 2 seconds later. And what I think kind of seeking the counsel does, if nothing else, is it helps you to break this confirmation bias.
Wow, this is
because
so
because
good.
yeah, and you might think that you know it, and you like feel so strongly about it, but you feel so strongly about it not because it's a truth or because it's the right decision. It's because at a certain point of time you made some kind of assumption, and then everything your mind did over the next few days is just to get the arguments to support this assumption, and before you know it, like 2 weeks later, you're like, well, this is the truth, and how can it be not the truth? And like, you go to seek the counsel, and people say, well, I mean, you seem to be like a very lopsided. There are some things that you kind of simply ignored, and that were like very much on the surface. So I'm very, very much supportive of going and seeking advice, even if you don't need advice, even if you think you know it, even if you don't seem to have like any challenge. Just come in and ask it, like, does it sound reasonable? And surprisingly, sometimes it doesn't.
Wow.
Just for this very reason.
I thought that was really powerful. That's going to really help me a lot in my career, for sure. Just knowing that.
And I say, as I say, always get a second opinion. It's always good to have that
Yep.
other, because that's true. Is you see everything from what you see. You don't see anything from everybody else's point of view. And way I look at it is I like to hear 4 or 5 points of view and kind of pick from that what the actual truth is.
Mm-hmm.
Trying to figure out what's the truth versus the people's biases.
Yep, I absolutely support it. Just don't be afraid to ignore those opinions. So go out, get 5 opinions, decide which one is the best, and make sure to ignore the remaining 4, because everybody cannot be right at the same time.
It's good.
So hear them out, but just don't listen to everybody.
I mean, not everybody can be right, but everybody can have a somewhat right view. That's why I said you can listen to 4 different people, and they all are similar. They all have similar views, but of an opposite way of doing it. But there's really only the one right way, which could be a mixture of 2 or 3 of those. Not in all situations, but some.
You know, we talk about during these gateway group meetings that we're kind of hoping you guys get 2 things that God will speak to you, and that was one of mine. That was good. Who hasn't shared or that wants to share in this point?
I think that with sounding board, it doesn't always have to be about receiving an opinion in return. Sometimes it's about just unfolding the thought.
Good.
And so, which is, I mean, Howie's the one who had seeking advice, and then my thought on seeking advice was having a sounding board. Because sometimes I just want to bounce an idea to you. I don't really need or want the counsel in return. It's more of a, how did that resonate with you? Sometimes I can just look at your face and tell I don't need you to say anything. That's an awful idea. I could tell. But sometimes it's just letting that unfold. And I know how you had mentioned that, that's similar to how counseling works is, a lot of times they're not giving you advice. They're just sitting there listening, and you hearing yourself talk, can see the path a lot better. So.
Not outrageous, because what you're saying is, I look at the whole thing as somebody goes, such a great cook. Yeah, who's the one that's told you? You and your family? Because your family's not going to be mean to you and say you suck. Your taste buds are different, so you might want to ask somebody else what they think.
Before you start a restaurant, make sure somebody other than your family has tried the food.
Yeah.
That's what you're saying. It's smart,
like somebody that does not know you.
Yeah, smart.
That advice from outside of if it's a business idea, most of the time your family's going to just say, yeah, that's a great idea, because they want to support you. You need to get out and actually ask people that don't know you that well to see what they think. to a point. Obviously, when business idea, you go watch how far you go out because they could take your idea and steal it. But
That's why it's really valuable if you can find someone to disagree with you. What's really sad about the political world right now is that people cancel you if you disagree. And not only that, they actually call you evil sometimes, depending on, the person and how extreme they are. But they actually they'd be more than happy if you got, if you were fired or if you lost business because you disagree politically or whatever it may be. And yet what you're saying is so valid. And that's the reason why freedom of speech is so important. It's because we help each other by being a sounding board and by getting advice. But it also takes the kind of person, which it sounds like you are, that you want to make sure someone else can tell you that your food sucks.
Yeah.
So you have to be kind of open to that feedback.
Yeah, one thing I learned in the last couple of years when I was doing Uber and Lyft here and there while I was at the beginning of finishing my degree and stuff, is if you didn't mention Republican or Democrat, you just talked about social issues. You didn't mention what your party was. You could civilly disagree or find a middle point where you could both agree, and they could even sit there and admit that, yeah, your point's right, but no, I'm still feeling this way. But if you were to put Republican or Democrat in the front of it, all of a sudden it was like the Cowboys and Eagles fans at a game.
I totally agree.
So much tribalism, it's ridiculous.
It is ridiculous. And the problem is it shuts down. So what happens is that political person, all they're hearing is that this food is awesome. And if that's based on a lie, or if it's based on only a partial truth or whatever, then they're going to go start a restaurant in your metaphor, in your example, and it's not going to work. So yeah, I thought that was really good advice, actually. Interesting. The story, some of you guys have heard this before, but Jeremy hasn't, so I'll do the 20-second version. I started a website where you could honor people who made a difference in your life, like your coach or your grandmother, whoever made a difference in your life, whoever inspired you or helped you or whatever, called tohonorthem.com. And I spent 3 years in development. I spent about 6 or 7 years total on it until I shut it down. And I spent $125,000 on it as well, personal money. And I just gutted my retirement. I haven't ever caught up all the way. I'm working on it, but I'm not, who would have been way further ahead than I am right now. And so I lost all of that. And I had my whole friends and family crew telling me it was an awesome idea. And if I told you right now, if I pulled up the PowerPoint right now and I walked you through it, I could probably touch your heart about, people who made a difference in your life, someone should honor them. Someone should tell them. And that, by the way, that is true. Doesn't mean the website was valid though, right? Doesn't mean that the website was ever going to work. And so if I would have found a wider audience of people and I would have not done such a good job selling it, which is part of the problem, is I had a very belief-centric sales approach, a very, passionate, emotional approach. And that's terrible. I mean, in one way I discovered that I was good at sales, but unfortunately it cost me $125,000 to do that. And so I fully agree with you that this confirmation bias, that Dennis was talking about and what you're talking about with getting other people's advice outside your circle is really critical, because if somebody would have told me no, think about how much further ahead I would be right now,
I don't necessarily think it couldn't have worked, but it definitely would have hurt to have some other ideas of how to get it there.
Yeah.
And also have heard that, well, maybe, but probably not. You got this much chance here, this much here. So probably would have made you think a whole lot more of, worth my risk, is because obviously you got to look in the market. Is there something there for it? Has somebody already created it? Because I think one of the sayings I've heard a lot is if you can think of it, somebody's probably already thought of it.
Yep.
So the question is why didn't somebody do it?
Yeah, that was a red flag. That was a confirmation bias that I followed, because the company that was doing it wasn't working. And I counted the number of honors that people were doing on their website, and it was low. And I kept watching them over the year, development time, and it wasn't going viral. It wasn't doing very well. And so it was called Tribbit, and they're not even around anymore. Their domain doesn't even exist anymore. It's something else now. So you're right. Novelty in business isn't necessarily good unless you've got $100 million and you've got psychological case studies and all kinds of stuff behind it. But if you're a little scrappy entrepreneur like me, novelty could be the worst thing ever. I mean, I could have bought a Subway for that.
No. Well, the funny thing is when you're talking about if you had taken what you were thinking of a website and done it into a TV show, you could have been out, made millions favor with what's his name from Dirty Jobs.
Okay.
Whatever. That's pretty much what the whole was about.
Okay, cool.
Back to somebody,
Mike Rowe or something, Mike something.
To honor that person by giving back to them.
Oh, that's cool. That'd be right up my alley. Okay.
It's a TV show, but
that's cool.
The idea was for a website, but it went into a TV show, and it's got over like 50 million views or something, 100 million views on Facebook.
Very cool. Very cool.
But
Yeah,
also though, people already know who he is, right? He's already built that relationship with people, so they know that when he creates something, it's going to be touching. It's about that like connection with people that he has. And so novelty is good if you've already got a spokesperson for that or somebody that already, like Brian, your idea would have been great if somebody who they already knew was on board.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and I agree with you. You would have had to go and got Mike Rowe or somebody like that to have been the host or the face. I agree with that totally. Yeah, you got to have a face that's well known that has done it, and that's why you see so few like veterans charities and all these big charities for cancer and stuff. You don't see 100 million because there's everybody in the world who's wanted to start one that's had a family member die from it to honor them, but they just don't have that money, that time, and that voice or face on camera that just gets everybody to follow them.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, I'm going to check that show out. You're right. That's right up my alley. So too bad I didn't think about a show. But anyway, I agree with what both of you guys have said. I mean, everything everybody has said. It's funny how these talks, just like I said, they always have something for me. And that was really good. The next one is don't isolate yourself. So I'm going to let Jordan kick that off, and then I'll dive in and anybody else.
Yeah, and so in planning or in business at all, I mean, isolation is not, I'm going to run off to the closet or I'm going to lock myself in the house. Isolation can just be I'm not sharing information for whatever reason. Maybe I'm not in a position to where I want feedback, or maybe I'm not in a place to want to be vulnerable. And so in the isolation creates so many problems, and we've listed off so many of them about sharing and about advice. And so our advice is not to isolate, and we consistently talk about feedback at least every other week. So
well, we do. And the case in point is that Jordan was kind to me before, during our planning talk, but I told him about my job status and how it was a lot. I didn't want to tell him all the details because it's too much. And he said, you shouldn't I don't know how he said it, but something like, you don't have to prejudge that. You're robbing me of an opportunity to minister to you. I'm just going to put it in my own words, Jordan. But, you're assuming that, you're isolating yourself because you're not sharing, and you need to share. And it's a mutual connection where I could have been there for you. And because you don't want to share your job search because it's too much or it's overwhelming or whatever, you're kind of robbing both. I'm making it up here. Okay. I'm embellishing it, but you're robbing both of us. And why do you get to judge what I can handle? It's kind of what, I mean, you can run with that if you want, but anyway, I thought it spoke to me pretty good. Like, I, as an introvert, especially, I do isolate myself, and especially working from home like this for this many months, it's starting to kind of wear on me. And so I feel like I have to be willing to reach out and share a struggle or share what the status is to somebody, and not isolate myself. So I'm being vulnerable that I literally did this an hour ago.
I think it's kind of funny you say you're an introvert and you're tired of being at home. I'm an extrovert. I'm tired of working from home. I mean, I go into the office now, but because we really don't have people coming in because of COVID, it's still like working from home. I'm just in another home.
Yeah.
It's really nobody in there. It's just me and no clients coming in. It's like, I'm going crazy. It drives me crazy not being out doing stuff, going places, meeting people. I'm just that type of person. And it's like this COVID-19 thing is killing me.
Yeah. Sorry.
And I must be the only person that actually has been enjoying this. Because I'm used to being in an office, and then now I get to stay home all day.
Hey, it was fun at first, but after so long, I want to get the heck out of the house and not see the same thing all day.
You can come sit at the park with me.
You could sit there and stare at each other.
Yeah. I mean, that's my way. I mean, I've been
good
working
therapy
remotely for a couple of years. And that's what I do
Every
day.
I don't see how some people do it. I need the quiet. I see some people that go work remotely. They must not do any calls that have to do with sales or phone. But then I see them sitting there working inside of a busy freaking Starbucks, and I'm like, how do they get anything done? I'm like, or they'll be inside of a busy cafe somewhere. I'm like, I'd be getting distracted talking to people that are sitting down at the table next to me, not doing my work.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, anybody else relate to that warning of, when it's a difficult time and you're trying to build, and really any time, of course, you don't have to just be thinking about building during difficulty, but anytime, don't isolate yourself. Anybody else relate to that?
I know this is I wouldn't say it's a struggle, but I know for me, it's something that it's a tendency that I know that if I'm going the direction of isolation, I know that I'm going unhealthy. And so I try to put countermeasures in place to prevent me from doing that, even though, isolation can sometimes be more productive. If I'm closed off and I'm not receiving input, I'm just going, I can be more quote unquote productive, but I know that I try to put things in my bumpers to keep me engaged, to keep me, and again, that's just, I think like Dustin said, that's one of those is this group. It's coming and being present every week and being on the podcast with Howie and just doing that, and just putting those bumpers, because again, isolation is not the extreme of moving to Alaska, and so.
Oh yeah, and we can be isolated in a crowded room. I mean, I can do that.
I think the problem with being isolated sometimes too is the person may not want to be, but you've got to have the people to want to listen to you to not be isolated. Because there can be people that would love to tell their stories and stuff, and you definitely see a lot with people that are depressed or suicidal or whatever. It's not that they don't want to tell somebody; it's nobody's there listening. So long people don't listen, then they get to where they're afraid that nobody's going to listen. So you got to have that person you got to have that sounding board to unisolate yourself with.
Mm-hmm. That's good. Any more feedback on this one? Okay. Well, guys, let's, I guess if there's no more feedback on that one, let's move into prayer. We're going to stop the recording so we don't post your prayers.